Where might we want to go at the quarterback position, Fabs?
I don't like Anthony Richardson for this week because he's got Denver, but he's got a couple of good matchups later in the fantasy playoffs, and he's still available because the Colts didn't play last week. Aaron Rodgers has got the Jags this week. Great matchup. I've got Russell Wilson on the list, but now that we know that George Pickens is not going to play, certainly not an option for this week. But again, you're not necessarily always looking just for this week. Jameis Winston, not a great matchup this week against the Chiefs, but I believe he's got the Bengals in fantasy championship week. So that is a nice matchup for Jameis.
Are there any of those four that would be anything but super flex options for people?
Certainly. I think Richardson is startable when the matchup's right. Rodgers, I think, is startable this week against the Jaguars. And Winston is definitely startable when the matchup is favorable. And again, Bengals coming up. The Bengals defense is not very good. Russell, I don't know. I don't think Russell's startable in a one quarterback league unless he's got Pickens. And he ain't going to have him this week.
All right. Running backs, obviously, we are zeroing in on the Niners yet again.
Yep. There's a group of them. I mean, Patrick Taylor could start against the Rams this Thursday night, which is crazy. Again, they've got just something going on around in that backfield. Just everybody's getting hurt. Tank Bigsby led the Jaguars backfield this past week, and he is surprisingly available on the waiver wire in some leagues. The Jets duo of Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, both worth a roster spot. We don't know if Breece Hall's coming back this week, and they're playing the Jags. Sincere McCormick, who helped one of our dirtbag listeners get to the playoffs, is got Atlanta this week. Kamani Vidal-Sassoon for the Chargers. Gus Edwards has not looked great, and they've got Tampa coming up. Not that you're going to start Kamani Vidal, but pick him up, stash him. And then Kendre Miller also is worth more of a stash if you have Alvin Kamara. And I'm going to talk about that Thursday when I talk about my Fabs 5 stats to know. I am really worried about Alvin Kamara in the fantasy playoffs. I hope I am wrong, but I am kind of worried about him.
Well, I mean, as much as Dennis Allen's doghouse for Kendre Miller was frustrating for a lot of dynasty managers, it certainly benefited the Alvin Kamara fantasy managers. You know, that backfield was completely running through Kamara. And so the fact that it's been a little bit more split is not great.
Yeah, and I just don't love that, Derek Carr is probably not going to play. And just Kamara is a weird thing where if his number one quarterback is not back there, he's not been as good historically. And that includes going back to, when Drew Brees was a quarterback.
At wide receiver, there is a name here at the top of your list that I think is a legitimate pickup and potential play.
Yeah, Adam Thielen. Again, we heard that one of the dirtbags very intelligently picked up Thielen when McConkey was a question mark, and boom. He's had 2 good games in a row. Cowboys. There you go. Christian Watson. Do I play him this week? No. I don't like the matchup against Seattle, and he has not been a guy who's been typically great. He has been very cringy. In fact, most of his games are single digits, but I would pick him up. Elijah Moore.
I've never met anybody more committed to a bit than you with the mid and cringe thing.
And I know Nick Westbrook-Ikhine had a bad game, but guys, I mean, it was one bad game. So, and he got the Bengals this week. So it's that. If he's out there, I'd still pick him up. I'm not saying I would start him. Ray McLeod is coming off a big game. They've got the Raiders coming up next. Rome Odunze is coming off a big game. They've got the Vikings, good matchup. Quentin Johnson of the Lightning Bolts. If Laddie Daddy can't play again, he's going to get targets. I didn't put any Steelers on here, Lindsay, but I guess you could throw Calvin Austin on there. But after what we saw last week, I don't know that I can trust a Steelers wide receiver in the fantasy playoffs. In fact, I know I can't.
Yeah. But then, there's also a possibility that he scores 2 touchdowns like he did before.
Yeah, I know. But
it's just, it's a roller coaster. I don't know what the expectations are. I'm with you. You can't trust him. But then, you're not, if you're thinking about adding Calvin Austin, you are already in a state of desperation at that position.
Yep.
Anyway, so at least there's a little bit of blow up potential. From a tight end standpoint, who are we maybe looking to add?
Yeah, Pat Freiermuth is still out there. Not in a ton of leagues, but he's still out there, and he's had 3 or 4 good games in a row. The bad news is the matchup's not good against the Eagles this week. It's not a good matchup, but still thin
Tommy
position.
Trimble got into the end zone last week against them.
Yeah, I know. And that was like his only catch too.
He was my desperation ad of the week. I was so desperate in a deep flex league. I think one of our dynasties where we have to play like 6 flex spots. I had to pick up Tommy Trimble and then just cross my fingers.
Yeah.
When I tell you that my excitement level was like peaked when Tommy Trimble scored a touchdown.
Was it Aura 1000 peaked?
Something like that.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Juwan Johnson had a touchdown last week, and obviously he is somebody that Lindsay and I talked about last week as somebody to pick up. He was one of my sleepers of the week. Grant Calcaterra scored a touchdown, didn't get a lot of targets, and I don't know that I would trust him in the playoffs, but he's certainly worth a look. Austin Hooper, before New England's bye, had put up a couple of good games. Hunter Henry still clearly the number one tight end in fantasy from New England's roster, but Hooper is worth a look for the desperate.